Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest edition of the Futurephonic podcast.
It's podcast number 5.
My name is Sam, and I'm coming at you from Australia.
I'm Alex here in London. And today we'll be chatting to Regan from Nano Records. We reached out earlier this week with a questionnaire. We wanted to get your opinions at home about... wanted to get your feelings about how it feels to be an aspiring psytrance producer in this day and age. What are your desires? What are your frustrations? What do you find confusing? What would you ask someone like Regan given the chance? And so thank you so much to all of you for getting... We had tons and tons of responses, and it was super interesting. Like, really, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that we kind of already knew, but I guess you could say the volume of certain points was, was really interesting. That was one of the most interesting parts actually for me about just starting Futurephonic, starting a business, is when you start poring over statistics. I'm not a mathematical person at all. It was always like my super weak point, but I find it so interesting to just pore over stats and draw correlations. And what I really feel is that pretty much everyone is in the same boat.
That was very much what we got from the responses. It seems like most people are in a position where they want more gigs, they're not getting as many as they would like, or they're not playing at all, which was really interesting. And so a lot of the questions that we were trying to ask people, which we, like you said, we kind of already knew this, and we're like, okay, so yeah, what is it that you want to know that's going to help you get from where you are now to where you want to be? And, who better to ask than Regan, who's, the head of Regan, who's head of one of the, arguably the biggest psytrance label out there at the moment. So yeah, it was a super interesting chat, and we've got lots of really interesting bits of information and just sort of good ethos and advice coming up in the chat.
I found it constructive too as well. We didn't want to be unconstructive. We didn't just want to sort of look at the way things are and just chat about that. It was more like, let's try and come up with some other ideas about how can you get in touch with, or who should you be getting in touch with? We're all in the same
how
place.
Should you do it?
Yeah, it's like, it's always, we've got this music, we want to be musicians, we want a career. I think there's an aspect of it, and especially in the social media driven culture of, I want to be that guy. I want to be that guy up on stage. I want all those people to be bouncing to my music. And I don't think that's a bad thing at all. I think we all have that. We've spoken 2 podcasts ago about what Hazel Gale was saying, the cognitive hypnotherapist, about visualizing the process of making the music as opposed to playing the music, to take the emphasis away from visualizing where you want to end up and instead visualize the process of making it, whether that's in your studio or whatnot.
Just quickly, I think it's what we really got out of this, or like at least what I really got out of it, was distilling the mythology of social media and this idea that everything's just like rosy cheeks and big crowds and big parties and everything's awesome, and the actual reality of what it looks like to be someone at every stage of the game. It's like, whether you're just starting out, whether you're like midway through your career, or whether you're one of the top guys, and how much work you've got to do, and getting really clear on, this is what it actually looks like. This is not what social media says it is, this is what it actually looks like. So yeah, super exciting.
Absolutely. And so without any further ado, we are joined today by Regan from Nano Records. Regan.
Hey, brother.
Hey, brother.
Hey, how's it going?
I'm good. How are you, dude?
Very good, thanks.
Joining us today from the sunny West Country. You must be missing South Africa on mornings like this one.
Yeah, I am. Although, to be honest, it's pretty sunny here today.
Whereabouts in whereabouts in the West Country you're from? That's where I grew up.
I'm basically living just near Wincanton.
Ah, okay, cool. That's a bit. It's a bit. A bit over the hill for me. I grew up in like Westbury in Wiltshire, so yeah, not too far.
Not far from that.
I mean, you're like a hot weather guy, right? That's like in your blood.
I do prefer warm weather, that's for sure.
Yeah. Because you've been over here for what, like a couple years now?
2 years.
2 years.
2 years. So it's
Nice.
It's going really well. It's definitely paid off.
I guess there's like a benefit from just being in the middle of Europe and.
Well, that's it. Basically, it was more. I had to make the move for a number of reasons, and one of them was it didn't make sense for me anymore having the label and not being up north, because the label, still, I know we're busy and there's always a big output and people see us as this big thing, but there's still not that much money in it, in terms of just, releasing music, obviously. So
Sure.
I have to be gigging for it to justify having the label. And
Yeah.
flying from South Africa just a couple of years, certainly around like I think 2008, the flights just got too expensive and the bottom fell out of everything, so it slowed down a lot, and I focused on events in South Africa. But now I've come back, just playing more gigs, and it's working really well. I'm playing, so it's worked out. I've come here so I can be playing more gigs, and I'm busy, very busy these days, which is great.
That's awesome. But yeah, you've been all over this summer then. So like Japan, Brazil, Amsterdam, right?
Yes, I've been. Yeah, I've literally just come back from. I was in Amsterdam for ADE this last weekend. And
Oh wow.
part of last week, and the week before that we were in Brazil, and we had a Nano Records label party in Curitiba, and then did another gig up further north. And then had loads of our artists there over the weekend, which was great. Everyone off to different gigs. And then I think 10 days before that, I was in Japan, and then I had a good summer. I had some really nice festivals. Played at Wow in Italy, and Modem, and Azora, and Boom, and Taurus, and Fusion Festival, and a lot of my favorite festivals I got to play at this year, which is great.
It must be so nice traveling around like when I see the Instagram stuff, it looks like you're sort of traveling around as a bit of a Nano family quite a lot.
Quite often we do, not all.
Or is that just what we see at home?
No, I think that does happen. A fair amount is often if we'll try and also, try and tie it in that we can travel together when we can, as much as possible. We are trying to also push the label events and that kind of thing. So, like Brazil was great. So we had the label party. So I think I flew over to Brazil. Magic and I flew over together. And then when we flew back, it was myself and Magic and Tristan flew back together. And then even around Brazil, I was traveling with Jez, Laughing Buddha, and Mateus Earthspace, and it's great. And then also because we've got so many of us living in the West Country down here at the moment, there'll be, if we are on the same gigs, we'll kind of tie it together. Okay, when you going? What time? We're generally on the same flights, so we'll either jump in the car together, drive down to the airport, or jump on the train together. So we end up hanging out, chatting, and then. So it works out quite well, but it's because at the root of it, we've got this nice community happening here in the UK as well.
Make sure you got your packed lunches made for the car. And,
exactly.
Yeah, there's something quite funny about top of their game, internationally renowned artists like carpooling on the way to the airport as opposed to some sort of limousine situation.
Hey, who said it wasn't a limousine? I saw that Nano limo going down the A45 the other day. It's been following you guys on Instagram and checking it out, and that kind of actually links into what we want to chat today. And so we reached out to our listeners on social media this week with a questionnaire, and thanks so much for the many replies we got there. And it was great to sort of catch up with the desires and in some cases frustrations of our listeners, psytrance producers at home. I regard today's industry climate as actually more complex and confusing than ever in terms of like choosing a route. There's so much advice, so many courses now and videos on YouTube that have titles like social media myths exposed, and then meanwhile you go onto your device and you start scrolling and you're confronted with this onslaught of, you know, drop videos from the stage perspective, and here's me playing to 20,000 people and they're all looking at the camera, you know, hands in the air. And my feeling is that there's this sort of it's almost like artists become like almost like avatars for like people's ambitions. Like it's like a virtual reality. Like this is what it looks like to live your dreams. This is what it looks like to play to 20,000 people. So I think people are more amped than ever to touch it, to, you know, they want to reach out and touch it. So I think it's a confusing time for music producers. And so we put out this questionnaire and the responses have been really interesting. But before we get into that, I just wanted to ask Regan, like, do you consider yourself like a gatekeeper? Like, how do you deal with responsibility of being one of the guys who's essentially an arbiter for what gets to come through or not, or do you even see yourself that way?
I see, well, the label's role is that in a way.
Yeah.
You know, definitely a funnel or filter. And then, and yeah, we're just basically there to, you know, that's what DJs in the old days, and still maybe less so these days, because I think the DJ's role has been diminished a bit, and because with such a heavy leaning towards live acts and producers, which is also a good thing. I'm not poo-pooing that at all, but ultimately you'd have the DJs breaking new music and testing new things out, and music wasn't getting shared as easily and wasn't as easily distributed, which is amazing that it can be you know, literally make a track and the next day it can be available to thousands or millions of people. So I think, and I still enjoy that role of being a DJ and, you know, finding music, collecting music. You know, it comes down to my taste. And when we're talking about Nano, it comes down to my taste and Dale's taste and some of our artists. And, you know, we're sharing ideas and just the music that we like and we think that needs to be promoted. So, yeah, I suppose a little bit of a gatekeeper, but more in the sense of, I mean, it started for me as a teenager, maybe even younger than that, just being a music addict and totally addicted to music from a young age, and having tapes and walking around school with tapes in my pocket of the latest whatever album from some band, and, you know, saying to a mate, "My God, have you heard this album? Take it home and listen to it," you know. And did
you ever do that thing where you put the wire up like the sleeve of your jacket and then you sort of leant on your palm in class and with the earbud? And
exactly that. I mean, my pockets and my school blazer were always full of tapes, and I'd be making, if I wasn't just you know, and because we lived in South Africa, it's hard to get music, some of the music that I was into at the time, and which was a lot of kind of underground heavy metal and rock and stuff like that, and you just couldn't get it. So I would have friends who'd come down from overseas, or the fathers would go overseas on business and bring back a CD, like just one CD, and we'd all crowd around it, like listening to it at lunchtime. And they want to get their tapes out to make copies, you know, and then we'd be passing it on. Have you heard this? Have you heard this? And then obviously that kind of it was the same then for when got into techno and dance music in the mid 90s. You know, the first stuff I got was just to listen to. It was just tapes from like UK raves that friends' older brothers had brought back from the UK. Before and then I realized, you know, started to hunt down the two record stores in Cape Town that actually had dance music, and, you know, for DJs, and even that was more kind of club housey stuff. And then I'd source the weirdest stuff at the end in the last spin where no one would go, and go like, this is the stuff I'm looking for, this weird acid techno stuff.
I remember that feeling after my first ever rave, which was like the Liquid Party in 2000, and it was like, okay, I know it goes like, so I'm looking for the music afterwards, like I know it's got like this kind of it's but it's got this bass line, and then you listen to like Paul Van Dyke and like, no, that's not quite it, and then like someone put some acid techno and you're like, it's nearly it, but it's not quite, and then I stumbled over like Hux Flux. I was like, That's the stuff.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, exactly.
Family members sending me vinyl from around the world. I had uncles and aunts in the UK and the USA, and every now and again I get a package sent from them, and I'd say, so I'd be sending them into record stores. People at the going like, "Who the hell are you?" And they'd be saying, "Do you have anything along these lines?" And then stuff would arrive, and my first Goa records arrived. I was kind of just asking for anything kind of trancey or techno or psychedelic and underground, and just was at the whim of whoever was behind the counter. And obviously, just as Goa was picking up, and the Union Jack album that just come out. I remember receiving the Concept and Dance 2 and the Union Jack album on vinyl. I was like, okay, between these two things, this is what I've been looking for. So it's an aha moment, like, yes. And the scene was we'd also just had the first Goa hit Cape Town at that point as well. First guys, DJs had come down with some DATs and were starting to play like at the end of some of the raves, they got, and the first outdoor kind of psychedelic trance party would happened. And I was lucky enough to kind of fall into it then. But it was like, I've been waiting for it my whole life.
And here we are today, and music is a different kind of commodity, I guess. I mean, there's obviously tons more producers. Music software became accessible, whether you wanted to buy it or not. And now we have a method for telling people instantly if we've made some music. Yeah, I hear people's confusion. So I'm looking at this questionnaire, and it was really interesting to us to go through and see what people are frustrated about, And I would say like the number one thing that's instantly apparent reading through the answers is that people feel like they're just not being heard, not getting responses, and just just sending out a lot of stuff and not hearing back. That's like the main.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's probably just been like that for forever in the music industry, anyway.
Yeah.
You maybe have more direct access to people now. In the past, if we were doing Nano Records, 20 years ago, people would probably be sending me DATs or by post, check out, or tapes or something. Check out my new track, please, and hoping that I suppose when we started Nano, we were getting CDs and CDRs sent to us. Please have a listen. And now it's more than ever, people hunt you down on Facebook or wherever, or SoundCloud, and they just spam us with with links upon links upon links of stuff. And it's very hard. We actually had a promo box set up, a demo box set up at one point for people to start sending us demos. Then we just realized this is impossible. We literally, if we listen to everything, we're not going to be releasing any music, because we're going to spend all day, every day, just talking to people about their music and what they need to do to get it up to scratch. And then, but we're never going to, we're just going to be sitting there tutoring people. So it's, and at the same time, we're at a point now where as a label, we've got great artists, we've got a lot of artists, we've got more artists than we need, and we're at it, which is great. There's a point I've always kind of worked towards, where we've just got music coming in the whole time, and we know it's coming in from a good source every time, and we're still working with those artists. The amount of time is, my time every day is spent just communicating with artists every day, with our artists and other artists that aren't on the label. To be fair, I'd still do a lot of artists that I've met along the way who are sending me music, and I'm listening to it and saying, whether or not we're interested in releasing it. And it's often, why it may or might not work for us. The main reason for us these days is just the release schedule is just so full, and we, focusing on what we've got. I do try to get to things myself. I'm not sure how the other labels respond. Every now and then, when I do respond to people always seem very happy and almost surprised. That kind of surprises me that maybe less people respond. But sometimes it takes me up to 2 months to get to a link, and then by the time I get to a link, they've taken it down. It's with the touring and then trying to manage everyone else. It's not the priority. I think, if we were a new label, it might be a different thing. Oh, we're looking for new artists. For sure, we'd check out everything. But, I mean, James West is a good example. He sent us a SoundCloud link at some point. I hadn't heard of him at the time. For some reason, I just clicked on that link that day and I listened to it. I was like, I see a future here. I can hear a lyricism. He's got I can hear he's got a keen ear for music, and I think there's a lot still to come from him. He's working on his album now, and I think in the next 10 years we'll see him develop massively as an artist, as long as he keeps focused. And that's a whole different, and he is focused. But that I mention that only because often we find artists who they kind of come in and they think they've got something, but they don't actually push it enough. But he is doing that.
So what was it about James that you were like, interesting?
I don't know.
What grabbed you?
I mean, I'm listening to a lot of music. All day, every day, I'm listening to music, and there was just something there that just, it seemed like there's a musicality. To be honest, I think there's a lot of people who can produce. I think it's amazing how people can now learn to produce online. I think what you guys, Futurephonic, are doing is astounding. The amount of people people come to me and go, "Oh, do you have tips for me or what for production?" I was just like, "Just go to Futurephonic. They've got all the answers right there." I wave that flag.
We're getting there.
Yeah, I think what you're doing is great, and I wave the Futurephonic flag a lot because I think it's there for the taking. It's for people to tune in and buy the workshops or go online and see all the bits and pieces you guys have up and listen to the podcast. So technique wise, people can get their skills up there. I think what people need to then to really carry things through is to come up with the unique ideas as much as possible and practice their musicality. At the end of the day, this is music, and I think people forget that. Guys and girls decide that they they see the DJs up there, or the artists up there. They want to be part of that. They learn how to produce. You can kind of quite quickly, with a very limited amount of music knowledge, learn to produce and maybe, eventually mix well and, make a running bass line and get a hi-hat pattern going and a snare on 2 and 4. It's not that's not the most complex thing, but, and also make crazy sounds and throw them around. But where it really comes to cohesion and flow and something that kind of emotively can connect to people, that's where it comes to harmony in music, and I think that's where people can really, learn a lot, or focus on as well.
Keep investing into that musicality.
Totally, you have to. And I think it also helps listening to other music, other forms of music, to get that inspiration to do that. And there's some people who are naturals, who are more natural at it, or have at least grown up with it, or have worked harder at it than others. There's a lot of tracks we get where I can hear, okay, these guys have been working on their production and they're onto something, but musically it's just not there. It's like, okay, we're just going to take this tribal chant or this mantra and throw in a triplet over here and kind of do the formulas which they would think would work, but although it's sounding good, it just doesn't go anywhere.
Because when you're kind of like pushing, like if you're approaching someone like you're not just selling like a track which might work at some point in the middle of a nighttime set, right? Because like I guess like a lot of these tracks would kind of work if you just slip them in, and if you're playing in Brazil and like midnight, and it's not that it wouldn't go off. It's just that it's like where's the artist? Where's that sort of artistic vision? Right, that's what's so sweet with new artists. It's like, what this guy's looking at, and increasingly I hope what this girl's looking at, that's exciting.
I think that's also a good point. Is I'm constantly getting sent demos where people are, you can hear they're just recreating either something, trying to sound similar to a Tristan or an Avalon or Burning Noise or Dixter or something, and I was like, well, I've already got it. I already work with Tristan and Avalon and Dixter and Burning Noise and Cutting Species. I don't need someone who sounds like them. Yes, obviously you want something that's going to sound, that fits our sound, which is quite varied, but at the same time, is maybe not, the same sound as some of the other labels that are out there at the moment. So it's, what can you bring to the table that is still fits into our framework that's different? And most labels will be the same, I imagine. Maybe some labels are looking for 5 of the same style acts because they think that's what they prefer. Cool. That's never been the case for me. I remember when, we had Protoculture in the early days, and we just suddenly got inundated by all these people doing Protoculture ripoffs. I was just like, I don't need another one. And they're never as good. Sure. They're never as good.
Yeah.
So I think, and again, it comes down to finding your own musical voice.
Yeah.
And letting that shine through. I think obviously imitation is a good way to start in terms of finding your feet. And everyone starts in cover bands and often when you're playing rock and roll and stuff. So, and that's fine. And covers are still cool also. Some of my favorite blues musicians and rock musicians are also still playing covers in between their own stuff. But it's a matter of finding your own musical voice at the same time.
Just out of interest, do you have an idea of like how many tracks you would receive on like a daily or weekly basis?
Well, I'll put it this way. I mean, to be honest, I don't even know how many we get on SoundCloud because Dale's managing that, and there was so many we just couldn't keep up. So I would have to ask him what's coming there via channels that get sent to me. Probably like 20 or 30 a day just via my channels, not counting SoundCloud. And SoundCloud's probably double that. And I mean, put it this way: I came back from ADE. I'd been away from Wednesday to Monday. Turned my computer on, saw a whole bunch of links from established artists that are my friends, artists that are on the label, artists that everyone will know these artists' names, that are sending me music have been sending me music to check out, either just for feedback or for me to DJ or, including my sets or possibly for Nano. And I think I suddenly had 15 gigs of music.
Wow.
I just pulled up a calculator and did the maths, and Regan, I don't know what you're talking about, man. Because if you just put a mere 4 hours a day into listening to this, that's like half a day. That leaves you pretty much the rest of the day to do all your other stuff.
Exactly.
So
I had a 10-day work week, and the rest of the world went to sleep for 5 days. I think I'll be fine.
I think everyone also knows that. I mean, I think that's what the frustration is. It's not like people don't know that kind of cold calling, if you will, is like everyone knows. That's why I think that it's frustrating, is because it's not going to work, but you still do it because you just don't know another way. So I'd like to kind of brainstorm other ways.
I think couple of things that people do that they probably shouldn't do. Biggest mistakes I find is that people will send music when it's not ready. There are a lot of artists who are now on the Beatport charts that I've seen who sent me music years before they're ready, and eventually started releasing on smaller labels and have got to a point where now their productions are rocking. But they certainly came to me at the wrong time, and when they do that, it's like wow, forget about it. What are you thinking? I mean, surely you could hear the difference between what we're releasing and what they're producing. And that means the second time they call or send something, I've already kind of said, well, I've been down that road.
Sure.
It'd be better to rather build. Certainly, if you're going for labels that are higher profile, I'm glad. I'm very proud to say that we are now these days. And I remember the process when we certainly, when we were starting out and we weren't, and how hard we've got to this point. But I would definitely recommend people. Timing is everything. Make sure your beats are up to scratch, productions up to scratch, and get those out on some, smaller labels, or release it yourself and build up a profile, and then approach the ones who have even bigger profiles. So by the time you come onto their radar, they already know who you are. There's more chance of, I think, leveling up, as it were.
Yeah, like if you have a meeting with Bill Gates, like you're not just like, this is some software I've been working on. It's like, here's the big pitch, the big, it's like Dragon's Den or something like that. There was one question actually that really kind of poked out to me. I'm not sure quite the intention behind it, but it was just very simply, in a sea of quite long answers, it was just, how can I get involved? And I'm reading that like, how can I pitch in? How can I get my hands dirty? You may not necessarily be looking for, staffers at Nano or whatever, but it sounds to me like, how can I make myself useful? Which I like that kind of attitude.
I do like that attitude. And then we also do get a fair amount of people messaging us saying, asking, can we intern? Can we do this? No, not really. We haven't got the capability.
An office
for that. We used to, but now it's more, the office is at home and everyone works satellite from home. Dale's in Cape Town and we've got other people working, in various places. And our meeting places on Skype and WhatsApp. And we're sitting in a virtual office essentially every day. So that's not, not so easy. And it's also that already will get to my attention though. If someone, wanted to say, how can I get involved? It'd probably be more interesting if someone came with an idea and said, I've got this idea that, we could do this or that. That would show even more initiative rather than just, how could I get involved? So I think if people can figure out the angle that they want to, figure out an angle that they have over someone else and to get involved, make an offer. I remember my early days trying to get into the scene as a DJ, and advice I had from someone I was working with at the time, and he was an older DJ, and he's like, just, be there and get involved. And he said, just get involved. It's exactly that thing. Be there, be around, get involved wherever you can, but figure out what it is you can do.
So this is one question, to sort of expand upon the previous question. It's something that you hear sort of banded around a lot in society of sort of a thank you economy or like a mutual kind of back scratching in this respect. And it's like, okay, well, if you want something from someone, it's a really good idea to come to them first and be like, hey, I can offer you this, or like, I can do this for you. And that would then lead to something that you would want in the future. But if you take someone, I think that works with people that are on sort of similar levels of influence or power. If you take sort of top roster artists, and they're like, "Hey man, do you want to remix my tune?" And they're like, "Yeah, sure." And then they get remixed back off them, and that works because there's an equal sort of value exchange. But say, if I'm, Johnny nobody and I'm just starting, and I'm really trying to get my shit together and get my tracks off the ground, and maybe I've got really good tracks, maybe my tracks are at that point where you can be approaching Bill Gates, so to speak. Like, is there anything, and there may not be, but I mean, what are your thoughts on like how would Johnny Czechoslovakia scratch like Republic, your or Nano's back? It's like, what sort of things, how do you sort of see that playing out in terms of someone that isn't sitting at the level that they sort of want to be at? Like,
how can people make themselves useful without just providing musical services?
Well, I want to hear from them. I don't want to give them. It's going to be ideas that I haven't thought of already. If whether so, I know there'll be a lot of promoters who have started out as DJs or artists, or a lot of people in the scene, wear many hats. So we come across artists, promoters that we work with who are artists as well. Sadly, and some of their music's amazing, but sadly, just because of our crazy release schedule, we still can't even release their music. So maybe we're not the best example, but just because we are so chock-a-block. But in general, I think that's also a good way if people are, and you often find, being the new artist, the starving artist cliche. It's they're often involved in other things, and if they're involved in events, you might find that there's a connection there. I think that's also a great way when there's, whether it's just being opening for someone, DJing before them, or even just being involved in the party and helping at a party, or even organizing the party. Suddenly there's a human connection. When that human connection's there, it's also a lot easier.
I'm glad you said that, because part of our questionnaire is we ask some multiple choice questions, which Google have lovingly presented to us in a nice pie chart with some pretty colors. And so it was really interesting because we had quite a few responses. So it's definitely a sort of cross section of aspiring producers we're looking at here. So 43% said yes, they are playing some gigs, but they would like to be playing more. 45% said they're not playing gigs yet. And then when we asked, do you feel part of an artistic community? If I add two of the results together, almost everybody either has a few friends who are producers, or they're Chinese producers all the time. And then in the third pie chart, where we asked, do you feel like you live near a location where there are lots of parties? 50% said yes, there's lots of parties where I live, and most of the other people said that they live near that. So it's like when you tie those three together, it's like, so you have community, you're in a place where there's lots of parties, but you don't feel like you're getting enough gigs. Make a party.
Yeah. Be the scene.
Yeah. The scene.
We were talking about this actually just before the show. I mean, I've recently moved to Australia. I've been here for a few years, and I know almost, my contacts compared to compared to when I lived in the UK is like very, very minimal. And I'm in a position where I'm sort of starting a new musical project, and it's literally just been a straight hustle in terms of, okay, I'm going to think of anyone I can think of that's vaguely connected to anyone else, and I'm going to start putting a night together, and I'm going to start putting some events on. I'm going to start doing these things, and by slowly even just thinking to myself, like, what's one thing that I can do every day to get a little bit closer to where I want to be. It's like things start happening. But it's funny because like looking at our sort of responses, it's like it seems like the answers are right there in front of people, and surely if you start making your own labels, making your own gigs, doing all this kind of stuff, it's like, just as as you guys did, and as every label had to start from somewhere, it's like that to me seems like a really strong option in terms of starting to get some traction and getting yourself out there and getting known.
I think so.
And there's power in numbers.
Exactly. I think even getting a collective going, even if it's not the end goal, but get a label, put a label together, is easier than you think. And it's obviously when all you want to be doing is writing music and gigging, then spending time creating a label or throwing parties is distraction from that. So if you can afford to just focus on music and keep chipping away at it, great. But if you in terms of spreading, at the end of the day, when you spread the vibe in whatever way possible, and you will eventually get maybe, or rather just find a friend who wants to throw parties and help them and get the lineups together of your friends who are writing the music and making the music, and just start building something up there, getting the music out there yourself, even if it's, and I think it's also a good thing to create your own space to release music, in terms of if you're a new artist, unless there's a lot of space on a label and the label's kind of on the up and up, you're probably going to be, it's kind of starting further down the tier anyway. I think a lot of artists will think, I've just signed to Nano or some other label, and that's established, and think they've got it made. It's just, you have to work even harder now, because promoters are coming to us and going, well, we'll book X, Y, and Z, and then we say, well, how about these new artists? Oh, we've already got 5 from you. So yeah, whereas it might be easier to kind of break through on a smaller label or your own label. And I think that's what I do love about the kind of the DIY culture of psy trance, but obviously it has become more and more, seems to be more and more big business these days. But there is still that. And I think like the guys in like Serbia is a good example. The Tesseract guys are doing really together lately. And I think there's and Kimmo, who's kind of really pushing things there as well, is doing a great job. I think there's a definite cohesion I think people, sit up and take notice to what they're doing. Although a lot of those artists are already established on other labels anyway, or on Tesseract.
Yeah.
So maybe not the best example, but in terms of people banding together, I think it's cool. And, it's also kind of geographically, they're all kind of in the similar area as well. So, and that, again, we come back to how we've got this crew in the UK here. So and you mentioned people all feel part of the community often. It's amazing, it's the strength in numbers game,
It's also empowering, when it makes it feel more real when you're actually talking to people. And if you're preparing for a gig, and if you've got a night that you're doing with some friends, and then all of a sudden you're on the phone sorting it out, and then preparing the things. Before you know it, this is it. You're now spending fucking 20 hours a week doing it. I just wanted to add to what you say that it also just takes many years.
Yeah.
And it's different for everyone. Some people get into it quickly and some people don't. But just for people listening at home, it's something that I've said a lot, but will never stop saying, is that, if you've only been producing for 2 years, I would be very, very surprised if you're there. Even less than 5 years, to be honest, to get your production and your musicality up. I think you should be looking at yourself quite critically if you've been doing it for less than, I would say, 5 years, but it's different for everyone.
Yeah, I agree. We also get demos sent via wherever. Hey, I've been writing music for 18 months. I think you might like it. They're like, you're going to have to be an amazingly talented person to get to the level in 18 months that you think it's going to be up to our level of quality.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's impossible. How realistically, 5 years might be more realistic, That's already a thing. Someone sends you a message. I've just started writing last month. I think you might like it. I was like, I'm not sure if I'm even going to listen to it.
The industry has a way of filtering itself out, though. Anyway, if you can keep going after 5 years,
yes,
that's you've already passed part of the test anyway.
Yes, I think so. There's definitely a longevity. Keep chipping away. It goes a long way.
One of the most common threads that we've had through our chats with our audience is one of social media, not just using it as a channel to contact artists and labels and stuff, but also just in terms of things like having a sort of personal brand, like press shots, logos, like photos, videos of you at gigs, this kind of stuff. How much of an impact does that stuff have on you guys when you go to, if you were thinking about signing someone, let's say their music was super shit hot, but they had zero personal branding and social media type aspect? How would you sort of approach to that? Is that as important as the music, or that's kind of to your colleagues as well? Do you get a feeling that people look at play counts? Because I know that you're kind of pretty fully stocked at Nano anyway, so it's kind of the vibe that you get from chatting to your colleagues and other labels.
It's still music first for us,
Nice.
And we can always work with an artist to get them to push their profiles online. It is as important to have an online presence these days in as many places as possible, so it's at least 50-50, but the music is tantamount. It's the most important thing still for us. It's all about the music. So I think if an artist sent me a demo and the music was absolutely killer and totally fresh, and I just couldn't not sign them, and they didn't even have a Facebook profile, they would still, I don't think I would be turned away by the fact that they didn't. I think they definitely, if they had even just a small little Facebook page with 1,000 friends on it to, have liked their music, I wouldn't go, they haven't really put much stuff out yet. If the music's strong enough, and then we can focus on profile. But you have to be ready to create some kind of profile, whether it's, hopefully keeping it real and just putting your real self out there, because there's just so much falsehood out there these days, and telling your story, and so people can lock onto that and as a persona or a brand. Dirty word, but that's what it comes down to. At the end of the day, music first.
There's a couple questions asking one thing, and so I'm going to take the heat off you for a second here, and just and make this more just about the sort of industry in general. But one opinion that I see around a lot is all the main lineups are the same old artists year after year after year. Where is there a space being cleared for new artists, or is it kind of, a bit of an old boys club, and it's just I think people feel like they can never penetrate up the echelons because it's just the sort of, I know some might even say dinosaur. It's just year after year after year. Is that a fair?
I think let's use Avalon as a good example. I mean, 10 years ago, no one knew who he was.
Yeah.
And the lineups, there were probably people playing on the lineups then who are still, at the top in the bill today. But he's also topping the bill. So, and he's worked harder than anyone I've ever seen. All credit to him. He's extremely hardworking person and very focused.
Yeah.
And makes smashing music, and he knows what it takes to to rock a dance floor. And so there's he's made a space for himself, and I think there's certainly space for people to make space for them. I think there are artists coming up all the time, but at the same time it takes time to climb those ranks as well. I think maybe less so in the psytrance scene than something like techno or EDM, where someone suddenly breaks through with a big hit and they shoot up lineup suddenly because they've had a big hit. It's psytrance isn't, yes, they are the big hit kind of thing, but again, it comes back to the longevity. Is that going to, is the next track as good as the last one? Is the next album as good as the last one? It's a very critical crowd, and I think we're lucky in that it's, a lot of it, not all the time, a lot of the scene is, is music focused. Some of it's, a bit too overhyped, but a lot of the time it is music focused, and it's about what the promoters and what the dance floor want on the dance floor. So, if artists stray from that, they're just not going to be getting those gigs as much, even the established guys. So, but I definitely think there's space for people to move up. But I think people underestimate how much work it takes. And the thing is, the guys at the top aren't sitting back. There are plenty of guys and girls, I keep saying guys, and because it is still way too guy heavy, the scene. And definitely want to see more and more ladies, coming through. And there's some very talented girls out there who are really smashing it. So that's a whole nother discussion. But if I say guys, I mean everyone, actually. But at the end of the day, those people at the top are still working hard at it. They're still pushing their elbows out and to keep their position. They just had a lot more practice at it now. So yes, maybe it's harder to kind of nudge past them. But promoters are always looking for something fresh as well. They still need the headlines to maybe pull the crowd in. They still also need something fresh to pull the crowd in, so they don't feel bored. Oh, they've heard that person again. But at the end of the day, certain headliners, or you go to there's no denying when they're playing, the dance floor's double the size. Everyone wants to check them out, even if you've heard them 5-10 times.
And that's what an industry is. It's supply and demand, isn't it? And I think that it's good to remind ourselves sometimes of one of the stark realities of the music industry is it is an industry. Like obviously it's got to be about great music, about great experiences, about the love of music. But then there's this word industry, which means like it's kind of a bit more of a capitalistic kind of sort of system where of supply and demand. And we have to remember that we are almost business people when we're working in an industry. You just mentioned something which about how you think maybe people don't see how much see how hard these guys work. And that really linked back to me about when we were chatting with Shahaf from Freedom Fighters a couple of weeks ago. And he was talking about, you don't see on Instagram the real back scene. You see the backstage, but you don't see the backstage behind the backstage. And he was talking about feeling very lonely on tour and actually being sort of stuck in paradise for 10 days and actually feeling kind of like pretty melancholic and really like genuinely missing his family and his friends, and also you see the kind of like, hey, we're in the studio, check it out, but you don't see hey, it's 5 a.m. and like I'm still in the studio and I've got this deadline and actually I just really need a fucking coffee and to sleep. Like, you don't see that, so I think it's another example of how social media is creating this mythology about the scene, and it's like kind of good vibes only, but there's maybe an underappreciation of how much shit goes into it. It's like how many blood, sweat and tears really means.
Yeah, I think there's a huge amount of the hippie ethic in psytrance and dope smoking, and everyone thinks like, yeah, they're just gonna sit back, smoke some weed and write some tunes and they're gonna play some gigs. It's like, man, you're not gonna get anywhere just doing that. It's the amount of work you have to put in. It's serious work. Don't just because you're not putting on a tie doesn't mean you're not working. This is work. This is proper serious work, and that's what it takes. The guys at the top are working hard. No one's sitting back. They're sweating blood. They're working late night after late night. They're communicating with whoever they need to communicate to push things along. They're not just sitting back. It doesn't just roll in for no one.
Yeah.
For no one.
Yeah. I was sitting with Tristan doing the masterclass last year, and super warm guy. There's he is completely as you see in the big videos and stuff, but it's not all just like punchlines. It's like dude looks like super focused and a little bit stressed out, and like, but still still upbeat, but like you can see someone dealing with really high workloads that maybe you don't see so much.
Absolutely.
On his news feed. I mean, dude's working hard. Like, and he like you, they has a family. I mean, how do you mentioned it's your daughter's school holiday, like.
Yes.
And then you said you're about to go away for like 3 weeks or something. Like, how do you balance it out? I know a lot of people at home have got a family. I mean, I'm just curious, like how
it's tricky as well. It's really tricky. My wife and daughter are very understanding and accommodating, and our communication's really good, and we talk about it as a family all the time. I think I specifically slowed down on my touring when my daughter was born, and because I was so focused on my festivals in South Africa, I was lucky enough that I could afford to. And now we've moved here. She's older, she's just turned 13, and she's always known I was DJing. I was always still going off for gigs here and there, and maybe disappear for a month in the middle of the year to go to Europe. Now I'm around less, but she's older, so I'm glad I was there for those formative years more. I think someone who's touring a lot and they've got a young kid, it's hard, especially when the kid's going to get to like 2, 3, 4, and they start thinking, well, where the hell's mom or dad?
He's at a psytrance party.
Well, the kids eventually, they figure out. I mean, my daughter said to me the other day, she's basically, you have to travel to earn money. I was like, yeah, that's what it's about. And it's like, she goes, okay, I get that. That's your job, is traveling. But again, it's communication. We're lucky enough that our communication is really good. But it's not that it's easy. I miss them dearly from the minute I leave home.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's the life I chose.
Yeah. What else am I gonna awesome. That's been really, really informative, dude. I mean, I think one thing that's really clear throughout this whole process is that it's really comes down to whether it's making music, whether it's making connections, whether it's building your profile, whether it's keeping your profile at the top. It all just comes down to really like a lot of hard work and a lot of clarity around what you want and a lot of
patience.
Focus. Yeah.
And patience, yes, exactly. Yeah, well,
Yeah.
definitely all those things.
Yeah, absolutely. If there was, this is a bit of a cliche question, but it's one thing we sort of almost like to ask everyone that we get on the show. If you could sort of give one single thing, like one single piece of advice that you think would be the most important to someone trying to make it, what would you say, like in a sentence or two?
I think, work on your musicality, work on your production skills, and then focus on getting as much music written as possible and getting it finished, and then getting it out there to as many channels as possible. Working on your profile online as well. Again, this all comes down to everything I've said in the last 30 seconds is preceded by the word work. So it's just it's dedication, it's work. But focusing and pushing all those things. I think it's really important also just to be consistently, finishing music and getting it released, getting it out there, getting your catalog up and happening, and getting your profile up that way is huge. And consistency and hard work.
Awesome.
Yeah, totally.
Awesome.
Well, Regan, man, I just want to thank you so much for joining us today.
Pleasure. Always a pleasure. Keep up the good work, guys.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's great to have your insight, because I'd say 95% of this whole conversation in general happens without, really getting it from the angle of people like you who are, working at places like Nano. So it's so great to have it sort of from that angle. But thanks so much for taking the time today, dude.
Pleasure. Absolute pleasure. All the best, buddy. Thanks so much for
Be well.
Cheers,
Take care,
Regan.
brother.
Ciao.
Always great to catch up with Regan there. As I was saying, it's such a huge conversation, but it's great to hear it from sort of straight from the horse's mouth, like straight from someone who is standing where he is, and just to get his take on things.
Absolutely. And I think the emphasis on hard work and dedication and sticking to your guns is so important, and removing distraction and staying focused. And speaking of staying focused, you're in the middle of a social media blackout at the moment, is that right?
Yeah, I'm like midway through, and I'm still here. It was actually my partner said to me last week, 'cause she has the same frustration constantly on social media, constantly on Facebook especially. She said, like, let's just take a week off. And I mean, my first instinct was like, well, I can't because my project, all this shit. I can actually, and because I've got you running the Facebook anyway, the Futurephonic stuff there. Thank you very much. But yeah, we basically just got a friend of ours to change our passwords, and we get them back next week. Although I'm already at that point where I'm like, I don't even know if I
want it back
necessarily want it back straight away. And like, let me qualify this. Like, I am pretty addicted to Facebook. Like, and
dude, I think we all are.
It's not one of those cool addictions, it's not one of those, like, I don't think any addiction is cool, but it's not glamorous, I mean, I don't know, there's just something about saying I'm addicted to Facebook that just sounds that I felt shame for that, you know what I mean? Like I felt like a bit of a loser, to be honest. Like, Facebook, why would you be addicted to Facebook? Like, just get a fucking life, dude, that but it's like it's the procrastination, and so for me it's I've got various musical projects. I do music full time. But a lot of it's for Futurephonic. I also do music for other people's videos, and I've got my own personal projects. And I just found that every time I'd like stumble across a really great idea, especially with my own personal music, especially with my own Alex Story stuff, then that a good idea presents an opportunity to get closer to the goal, the dream, the dream of getting there, wherever there is, whatever, the definition of where we all want to be. But it's like a good idea was like a threat in a way. One thing I really realized is that most of us, I think, or certainly with me, and observed in a lot of people, that we're not really afraid of failure as much as we're afraid of success.
Absolutely.
It's so easy to be like, oh, I'm afraid to fail, but I think it's actually like the pressure of being the person you actually want to be it's actually easier to just fail. It's easier to just say, you know what, I just can't do it. I'm sorry, guys, I tried, but I just got up there on that stage and I just couldn't. Sorry, I'm out. I'm finished. I'm done. That's so much easier. I mean, it's not easy, like it's okay, but like it's gonna make you, like, it's not gonna depress the shit out of you, but like it's actually a lot easier than believing in yourself, and that you are actually a person who is born to be up there, to be one of those people, to be a respected, a loved musician, to be a force of music. But Facebook fits into that so perfectly because it becomes like a macro response, right? So it's just like going down. I'm still one of those PC users, so it's like bottom left corner, the little Windows icon, and then the thing pops up, and then I go on Google Chrome, and then type F, and then that brings down like Facebook as like the most recent thing, and then just hit enter, and that became an automated response. So it wasn't like I wasn't consciously thinking any of this stuff, right? It was just like as soon as I start getting somewhere,
it's habitual,
yeah. It's like it's a response, it's like a behavior, and before I know it, I've actually just been scrolling through people's stuff and just like, oh, hey, so my friend Brian's like, he's in town, dude, we should hang. Whoa, wait, what the fuck am I doing here? Why? I was supposed to be working on my music.
Yeah.
I was supposed to be working on me. I was supposed to be being what I want to be,
Yeah.
So I really enjoyed the time off. And I also just want to say that this is something which I also realized was happening to fucking everybody.
Dude,
it's like whether
everyone.
Yeah, it's like from, I've sat next to a lot of really big artists, people who you would think have absolutely no doubt about their place in the world, who have absolutely no doubt about that, and people who look so powerful standing there looking at 20,000 people in Brazil. They look so fucking powerful, just rocking it. They're also sitting, we all have these doubts. But so for me, getting off Facebook for a little while has been valuable. So now I spend 40 hours a week on Instagram.
Yeah, dude, no, 100%. I mean, we've been talking about this a lot actually in the last few weeks, and I find it's the same for me but slightly different in that where I go to work, so my studio has internet, but it's really shit, like it's really bad quality internet, so I don't even use it unless I have to like update things. So when I'm working on music, for me it's good, I can go to a separate space, it's not there. But the one for me is on my phone. Like my phone is in my pocket or in my hand or on my desk all the time, and I've recently been reading a book called How to Break Up with Your Phone, and it's awesome. It's like I've gone from looking at my phone constantly to now I still look at it more than I would like, but slowly I'm getting better and using things like that off time app that blocks your phone at certain times of the day and that kind of stuff, and so much more productive and so much more focused, and you just feel better about yourself and the world and what's going on, because it's like something that we, that this thing we're talking about earlier in terms of like on social media, everyone's having the best time. It's like, You don't see the shit. It's like you wake up in the morning and you might be having, like, you might have not slept very well, and maybe something bad happened to you recently that isn't in the grand scale of things super bad, but then you go on fucking Instagram and it's like everyone's on holiday, everyone's at this like party that's like the best party ever, like everyone's just having the best time, and you're like, and I've got to go to work, or fuck, like I didn't have a very good night's sleep last night, or whatever it is, it's just completely unrealistic, and it's like our brains can't handle it, man. We're not supposed to be able to deal with that level of input. Like, it's just we haven't evolved that well. So yeah, dude, 100%. Like, I respect and admire you for getting off one form of social media and getting addicted to another form.
I'm not really on Instagram 40 hours a week. I know what you mean. If I understand your point correctly, it feels like you're in a place with all your friends. To me, being on Facebook also feels a bit like being in like a really bustling like town square, where all my friends are passing through, and people who I like hearing from, people who I like hearing what they've got to say, are standing at various sort of corners of the square, just chatting, and people are sort of just sitting down and listening, But it's a bit like Times Square actually, because it's got all these neon lights which just feed us dopamine hits, and actually there was a quote I wanted to read from my favorite publication, which is The New Yorker, which they do the best investigative journalism that I know of in the world. And so they did a feature on Mark Zuckerberg. And so here's just a paragraph from that feature, which I found kind of a little scary, to be honest. So former Facebook executives, echoing a growing body of research, began to voice misgivings about the company's role in exacerbating isolation, outrage, and addictive behaviors. One of the largest studies published last year in the American Journal of Epidemiology, got through that word, followed the Facebook use of more than 5,000 people over 3 years and found that higher use correlated with self-reported declines in physical health, mental health, and life satisfaction. At an event in November 2017, Sean Parker, Facebook's first president, called himself a, quote, conscientious objector to social media, saying, quote, God only knows what it's doing to our children's brains. A few days later, Shamath Palihapitiya, the former vice president of user growth, told an audience at Stanford, quote, the short-term dopamine-driven feedback loops that we have created are destroying how society works. No civil discourse, no cooperation, misinformation, mistruth. He said he felt tremendous guilt about being part of Facebook. And then he says, of his children, he added, they're not allowed to use this shit.
Yeah, it's scary to think that it's relatively such a new technology, and yet it's just become absolutely integrated into our society. It's like, it's crazy. I mean, I've noticed,
non-optional.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, that's the thing. Like you were saying earlier, the amount of times I'm like, fuck, I really need to get off Facebook, and then I'm like, oh shit, but like Futurephonic and like the other things that I'm doing, it's like I need social media to make it work. And it's like, no, it's like you just gotta, if you absolutely need it, it's like at least restrict it so that you're using it when you want to, as opposed to, and when you need to, as opposed to like it using you. There's a really good book, dude, you should read if you haven't already, called The Shallows by Nicholas Carr, which like goes into this in great depth about what social media is doing to our brain. It's super, super interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's like so much stuff that we chatted about today, it's all just like, if we expect ourselves to just be instantly amazing and say, oh, well, I know this information now, so now I will be a perfect human being. It's like, if you followed everything that we've learned today, whether it's about social media use or about how to get gigs or how to get releases or how to build your artist career, if you just took all that information like a computer and just dedicated your entire life to just ticking those things off, then no one's going to do that, you know? So I think we also have to learn to be kind to ourselves, you know? I know that I need to spend less time on Facebook, so I'm going to try, but I'm not going to beat myself up if I spend time on it. Or thinking about the stuff we spoke about with Regan. If you find yourself slipping into behaviors which you think maybe aren't even the most productive, like, don't beat yourself up about it either. Like, it's fucking confusing being an artist today. It's fucking confusing. I don't blame anyone for misstepping and not always doing things the most perfect way. But it's great to keep the conversation up.
Absolutely, and I think just to add to that, like Regan was saying, it's hard work, it's consistency, and consistency for me is key with any of this developed stuff. It's like, you know, we didn't build the company in a day. You know, we haven't been interviewing these people in 5 seconds. You know, our music hasn't got to where it's got because we've just turned around one day and done it. So it's like small, achievable wins, you know, consistently working at what you're doing, keeping the eyes on the bigger prize. And like you say, when you inevitably make a mistake, embrace it. You're human. Like, learn from the mistake, move on, look at how you can change your process or, you know, adjust your goal or whatever. And if you stick at it and, you know, you're in it for the right reasons and you work hard, you can get what you want. You know, it's doable for sure.
And it's amazing for us to be in the middle of this community of music producers who have so much emotional investment and so much passion for what they're doing. And it's actually really an honor to be kind of at the epicenter of this whole wave of this whole generation of producers. So I love hearing from you guys, and it's great doing the podcast, and we have some more exciting ones lined up. So thanks for listening today, everybody. Tune in next time. We've got a corker lined up. Another thanks to Regan for joining us today from the West Country. And Sam, I'll chat to you a bit later.
Yeah, awesome. Catch you soon, guys.
Ciao. To find out more about our masterclasses and resources for electronic music producers, including Echotronics, our new Serum sound set for Psytrance, head over to www.futurephonic.co.uk.